COMMIT is a committee of the Rotary Club of Stratford, Ontario. At its core, COMMIT is about empowerment, helping individuals and communities in remote villages of Nicaragua gain the tools, knowledge, and resources needed to create a better future. The Sewing Co-op is a natural extension of this mission. In the very small village of Casa de Piedra, a simple yet powerful skill, sewing, is transforming lives. What may seem like just fabric and thread is in reality a lifeline for these women. Not only do they acquire a sense of pride for this newfound skill, it also continues to offer them a path to self-sufficiency and financial independence. Through the new Sewing Co-op, women are not only learning a trade, but gaining the ability to support their families, contribute to their communities, and build a better future. We see this in action in San Luis, where a thriving co-op of women gathers 4 times a week sharing skills and resources. They are now producing clothing and school uniforms for purchase in other communities. This is the power of service. A single skill can create lasting change, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. By equipping these women with knowledge and resources, we are not just providing them with a trade, we are investing in sustainable solutions that will ripple through generations.
Thank you very much for your attention on that. I'm going to beg your attention here. I know we're used to talking while eating. I would hopefully in the next segment, we're going to keep things moving. If you could pay attention to our speaker who's come here today, that'd be great. So I'll just get your attention for a second. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes to keep you on time is because we have a hard stop at 2 o'clock for some of our things going on. I'll come back to you and just remind you of that. We want to make sure that we're getting that to 2 o'clock in the lobby for the warehouse tour, and then at 2 o'clock to head down to the peace poles. Again, go to the lobby and you can get directed. It's only a 500-meter walk away. I will bring your attention to some of the silent auction prizes that we do not have bids on. So just to think about, if you haven't had a chance to look on your app or back there, number 37, Core Climbing Gym. This is for 6 people. Number 42, Last Photography. It's a half an hour of professional photography. Sorry, just hang on. And number 33, there's a Luxury Sugar Cove, and there's a variety of other beautiful clothing by Cabby that is in the back that we'd like you to bid on. So I'm going to ask Joanne Selves to come forward. She's a member of the Rotary Club of Stratford, quite an avid cyclist, to introduce our next speaker who I really have hair jealousy over. So Joanne, come on forward, please. Thank you, Joanne Selves. Oh, and one last reminder. We'll get back to these. There's 2 baskets, the scavenger hunt. For the winners of the scavenger hunt, I'll talk about those later. If you've been staring at the baskets, they're up for grabs on that. Joanne, thank you.
I have the very great privilege of introducing Kurt Harnett as our next speaker. It's on. Good. All right. There we go. Kurt is a fundraiser, a business development professional, an acclaimed storyteller, author, broadcaster, promoter, a former shampoo model. There you go. And mentor. He is a 4-time Olympian, 1984, 1988, 1992, and 1996. And a 3-time Olympic medalist, 2 bronze, 1 silver, all of those in track cycling. In 1995, Kurt set the world record in the 200-meter time trial at 9.865 seconds, becoming the first man in history to break the 10-second barrier, a record that he held for 11 years. So any of you who are cyclists can imagine how impossible that may be. He was also a very famous shampoo model in the 90s, where he tried many 2-in-1s, but found Pert Plus to be the best.
That's your answer, Peter.
Kurt was the chef de mission for Team Canada at the 2015 Pan American Games in Toronto, and also at the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, leading Canadian athletes and teams to record-breaking performances. Kurt is a member of the Order of Canada, our second one, here this weekend. Canada's Sports Hall of Fame, the Cycling Canada Hall of Fame, and the Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame. Currently, Kurt is the Managing Director at World Bicycle Relief Canada, a global organization that uses the power of bicycles to help people overcome the barrier of distance so that they can access education, healthcare, and economic opportunity so that they may thrive. I have to tell you that about 1 year ago, almost exactly this weekend, I had the privilege of meeting Kurt when he came to speak to the Collingwood Cycling Club, where I am a member, and I was absolutely blown away by his presentation that day. Here was someone who had poured his time, energy, heart and soul into becoming the best athlete he could be. He followed that by mentoring others after him who had similar ambitions. And then came the best part. He had taken that thing that he was most passionate about, the simple bicycle, and found a way to use it to make the world a better place. I trust that you will be as inspired as I was that day. Please join me in welcoming Kurt Harnett.
Good afternoon, everybody. How was lunch? Lunch was fantastic. I heard the chef here is absolutely fabulous. Peter, the answer is PERT Plus. As Joanne so well put it, that sure, I've tried 2 other 2-in-1s. If you Google Kurt and PERT Plus, you'll understand what you're being sold with regards to that. Tremendous honor, Joanne. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Thank you to the host, Rotary Club, to Catherine Hahn, and everybody involved in putting on this fantastic weekend of bringing such like-minded and passionate people about the growth and the potential of communities around the world together to make the difference. I'm always in awe of the people in the room, of Rotarians, and the focus and time and energy that you do have, and had the great chance of sort of reminiscing with Jean Aitchison and her recent investment into the Order of Canada. So congratulations, Jean, on that. Welcome to the club. Sort of. It's if you haven't heard Jean's story about how she found out and then the subsequent journey that she had with that, by all means, at an opportunity, just stop by and ask her to expand on it, because it is, I think, everybody that does eventually get invested, because I'm sure many of you in the room will eventually be there with the great work that you do. You'll have your own personal story that usually ends up being quite comedic. Mary Jean, I put the great presentation earlier. I hope to only match your passion and your energy towards what you delivered there earlier, but I also suffer from 2 of the same issues. Number 1, you put a microphone in my hand, I could talk to you for hours about something I'm really passionate about. And number 2, I need glasses. I'm here to talk to you about the power of bicycles and the impact that the bicycle can have and will have on the communities and the opportunities that it provides. I don't think it's a surprise, as Joanne introduced to you. The bicycle was a big part of my life, and it created opportunities for me that I never thought I would or ever imagined that I could be. So it's natural maybe for me to be a pitch person and to be very passionate about the power of bicycles and the work that we do at World Bicycle Relief. And you may reflect on that and say, well, that's the bicycle, and what does that have to do with me? But I draw you back. Many of you probably know how to ride a bicycle. And from my earliest days, and just reflect back on your earliest days, where you learned to ride the bicycle, and maybe to a point where you took the training wheels off. And when those training wheels came off, how your world all of a sudden opened up. Opportunity became something that you never thought. Access to the neighboring community just down the road or down the dirt road, right, Mary Jean? Like, it just has, and it opened up this world of opportunity in your mind. Many people in many parts of the world don't have that. They don't have that access. And I'm going to start my presentation off by just playing a short video that will help paint the picture as to what I'm talking about and what I will talk about further in my presentation.
70% of the African continent live in the rural setup and have no access to mobility. It is that group of people that we feel have been left behind. We want more bicycles in the hands of the people who so need them, in terms of the 3 thematic areas, which is health, livelihoods, and education.
These roads are not in good conditions. When I use the Buffalo bicycle is helping me because I can penetrate through these bad roads.
I think from the very beginning, we knew that bikes were the answer. And if we could bring our industry to bear on this serious, serious problem, we could make a really big difference in communities all over the world.
Most of what the industry produces will be for sport and leisure. That's not to denigrate those activities, but what we need is different. We need a durable, universal mobility tool.
If someone came to me and said, hey, where would you go for the absolute most talented product development engineers in the world? I'd go, well, SRAM, Giant, and Trek.
Trying to get user feedback, you want it to be as broad as possible. What we get from those field riders is pretty much everything. We get reality. It just highlights stuff that you just don't imagine sitting here in Chicago. We've been focused on not just how the bikes are used, but how they're seen, what kind of modifications that they make. And then different riders have different relationships with their bikes as far as maintaining them.
Onge gima nyalo timore kaka gocho. Koro ka mane omiyo nyaka gochi, kicho kanya lose kakia kaka ilose. Rima nyalo rieyo, to modong kanya tim.
This bicycle is durable. This bicycle is strong. I don't use a lot of force. I'm moving comfortably to my destination.
Imesaidia sana watoto wenye wanaenda shule. Kuna watoto wenye wajiwezi na wanasoma town huko. Sasa naona wengine wakienda na baisikeli asubuhi. Sasa imesaidia watoto kwenda shule. Watu wa biashara pia imesaidia sana.
The community has access to these bicycles through the shops that we have. And then we are training mechanics to support the bicycles that are in the market. We are giving them a source of income because more bicycles around, they will be able to take care of the bicycles. The energy that Buffalo Bicycles and World Bicycle Relief bring together is necessary to ensure that what we really wake up to do is being done, creating a good bicycle ecosystem in rural areas. The Red Cross has 500,000 community health volunteers. They have over 100 households to see, and when there is an emergency, it's even more than 100 households, and the timeline due to emergency is shorter. With how vast Uganda is, they cover distances of over 10, 15 kilometers. The Buffalo Bicycle needs to be there. We all need to move from one point to the other. Yes, people have walked to school, but it's a challenge. This is something that changes all these children's lives.
The Buffalo Bike, it means a lot to me because it has already helped me a lot. Now when I'm going to distribute, I can use Buffalo. In only 5 hours, I've already finished my work.
My business, it really expanded. I'm an agent of 4 companies, which I can supply perfectly. A businessman is expected to plan for the future. You plan for your own future. You plan for the future of your family. I'm doing it just because of this bicycle.
It's not our job to make our product successful. It's our job to make the people that ride the bike successful.
As I said, I'm passionate about the work that I get to do. Every morning I wake up with a purpose, and every time I watch that video, I get a bit emotional. So I apologize for that. But just trust that everything I'm going to say from here on in comes from the heart. World Bicycle Relief has the word relief in its name. Its origins, as you saw, FK Day, him and his wife, Leah Day, Misbah Day. saw what happened to the devastation in 2004 with the tsunami that devastated Sri Lanka, killing over 500,000 people and displacing 500,000 more. They sat back, or they couldn't sit back idly, and they went to Sri Lanka with the open hearts and open minds as to what they could do, because they couldn't sit idly by and watch what happened. And while they were on the ground there, they quickly found out that the answer to people that were displaced, roads washed out, access to food, water, all of those elements had a very simple solution to it, and that was the bicycle. On the ground there, when they were working with other aid organizations, the response to them was very, very quick. That there are other parts of the world that could use the bicycle to solve for some of the biggest challenges that they were experiencing. That need is that there's over 1 billion people in this world that are affected by what we would term mobility poverty. And that is access to the 3 core fundamentals. I think that we all as individuals in this room have either to look to provide for ourselves or for our families or for our communities. And that is access to a proper education, access to effective health care, and access to economic opportunity. We quickly transitioned from a relief organization into a solutions organization, recognizing that the barrier of distance can be overcome by the humble bicycle. And our response is, as you saw in the video, a little bit broader than just sending bicycles over to these communities. We understood that the bicycle itself needs to be purpose-built. It needs to be built to live, to thrive in the environment for which it is destined. No disrespect to some of the large retailers that we have in our communities, but a bicycle that you can buy in one of those large retailers here in Canada has no business being in sub-Saharan Africa. It would not survive there more than a month. They're not built for that environment. That's why we do invest in the research and development of the bicycle. I have 2 bicycles here. One of the originals, about 8 years old, sitting on the stage here, and then in the other room, in the porch, where we had that lovely presentation from Pat and the rest of the team on international development, I have a second bike there. They're 8 years apart, and there's as much as they'll look the same as they are, there are some significant differences. This bike is a 1-speed bike. The bike in the other room is a 2-speed bike. The bicycle is built in the way. As Pete, did you put the bike up on the stage? As you learned very quickly, the bicycle weighs 24 kilograms, right? Almost 50 pounds for our American friends. The bicycle can carry 100 kilograms on its back. For our American friends, 220 pounds. It is built to survive in this environment, the dust, the rain, the heat, the time and energy that we've spent on building the right saddle, the proper saddle to thrive. I had the opportunity to go over to Zambia in October of 2023, parked my buffalo bike under a tree. We were visiting a local school of 400 kids have these bicycles, and we were visiting this local school, and I parked the bike under this tree, expecting, okay, for the time that we were going to be on this visit, it was in a good, nice, sheltered space. Came out, of course, the sun had moved. I'm blonde. Sometimes things don't necessarily register very well with me. Blonde and concussed, I like to say, Mary Jane. It's kind of a double-edged, challenge that I've had. Sat on my bike, had been sitting out in the 45-degree sun. Kurt's a little bit scarred to this day as a result of jumping on the bike. But the bicycle is built to thrive in these communities. But we do more than that. And again, as you saw in the video, it's not just about bringing these bikes and putting them into those communities. We build this entire ecosystem. We thrive on building this entire ecosystem to ensure the longevity and the opportunity that these bikes can bring to a community for an ongoing term. That is because they can break. Things can go wrong. Chris Ramos, the lead engineer for the Buffalo bike in the video, sort of says, we do it at home ourselves. You have that same relationship. Everybody has a personal relationship that is very unique to themselves with their automobile, with their bicycle, with their washing machine, right? We sometimes, or our furnace. Let's talk about our furnace, right? Some of us make sure that somebody shows up every 6 months and does preventative maintenance on our furnace. Others, myself included, let it run into the ground and breaks and have to figure out and just buy a new one, right? That does still exist within the communities that we work. People do have personal relationships with them. Let me just go back to that just for a second. But we also, as was said, we train mechanics on the ground. As you saw in that video, the big boxes that were being loaded off the pallets, those boxes are actually, those contain 2 bicycles in them. It's a more effective way to ship them into the countries where we work. And we have warehousing where the bicycles are assembled in those facilities. So we employ people from the communities where we work to assemble the bikes, to distribute the bikes, to oversee the programming in the countries where we work. And our approach is to work very directly with partners and organizations on the ground in the communities where these bikes are distributed. One of the key areas that we do this is by building or creating bicycle supervisory committees. So in Canadian terms, $205 gets a bicycle into a community, into the hands of somebody that can use it, $165 American. We work with those bicycle supervisory committees to make sure and to determine where those bikes probably and could be most effectively used in those 3 key sectors. But also something as simple, if we're going to give that bicycle to a child that goes to school, a young woman, 70%, we endeavor, 70% of our bicycles that we deliver into our communities go to young women and girls. I'll touch on that in a second. But in helping a young woman go to primary school, get her education, the bicycle supervisory committee will say, okay, for that 4-year term, you will get your bicycle, and either that child can keep that bicycle for life and go off on a journey, or they will determine maybe that bicycle needs to come back into the school and be given and put into the hands of another child that could use that bicycle to travel up to 10 kilometers, 6 miles in each direction just to get an education and make it easier for them to do so. Where we work, there's 2 colors on the map. Well, there's 3 colors because there's the dark red and light red. Light red, the red colors are our program countries. The darker red being countries where we work in more definitively, or I think it's the other way around. The black colors are what we call our development or our fundraising countries. Countries where we work as a collective to raise the money to fulfill our mission. As you see on the chart there's 7 countries that we work in, a majority of them in sub-Saharan Africa. I don't need to read out the names, you see them there, but we're also in South America, Colombia, a country that I know that many Rotarians are very familiar with, and in fact, I heard some great stories in the international grant or the seminar that I was in that dealt with the international role that Rotary plays. Again, concussions and blonde, I'm allowed to have that. And I find it unique. And I'll talk a little bit about this, the relationship that we actually currently have with Rotary clubs around the world, and our shared mandates and our shared missions. And that is to positively influence, positively impact communities around the world. And there's no doubt that our neighbors, our backyards, our communities that we live in need support from groups like the Rotary, but that also expands out to a global perspective. As much as we have that need locally, we also, if not multiple times, I think, Mary Jean, I think you talked about this a little bit, is that the world is different now. Some of us that are in the international aid area have witnessed, great tragedy with the U.S.'s decision to suspend USAID, and the impact, the devastating impact that's having on many of the communities that we all work in these countries. World Bicycle Relief, not immune to that. We ran a program in Malawi called Bicycles for Growth that was USAID supported, and we're still not sure whether that's going to be a continued program for us. But it's mostly felt with the organizations that we work with to help get bicycles into these communities. Those organizations more directly dependent on that aid and the devastation that's going on as a result of that. Not easy to answer the call. Not easy to say, I also know that there's stuff going on in my backyard. How do I reach out further? But I know that this group here, based off of just my experience here for the hours that I've been on the ground, has that open heart and that open mind. I've listed here some of the areas, some of the impacts that have been and relationships that we have with a number of various Rotary clubs and organizations within. And of course, there's the International Fellowship of Cycling to Serve, a group of cyclists from Rotarians from around the world that go out and raise money, not only for World Bicycle Relief, but other organizations. Number of these opportunities, the German, my counterparts in Germany have a strong relationship with the national Rotary group there, and they deliver a number of effective programs on the ground. We get direct grants from Rotary clubs that vary in size and vary in value. And the last bullet point is actually an article on your own site that talks to a gentleman, Kip Nickel from Traverse City, Michigan, who brought a group of Rotarian clubs together to generate some revenue, did one of your international grants, and is doing significant work in Malawi to mobilize people on the ground there. That's the front page, this Pedaling Toward Prosperity article. If anybody wants to come and talk to me, find the link, or I'm sure you could find it online yourselves on the site. But with Kip's work, you've delivered over 220 bicycles into Malawi hands to help people thrive in those communities. Let's talk about the impact. What does this bicycle do? For young girls getting an education, going to school, the number that stands out to me, and Mary Jean, you might be able to support this a little bit in the work that you've done, and I apologize for pointing you out, but I was so inspired by your presentation that I can't help. I wish I had your skills, your passion. 66% increase in punctuality. Now, to us and our kids that went to school in Ontario, ourselves even, you're late to school. What is that? Maybe a couple of times, a pink slip. You have to clean the chalkboards at the end of the day, right? A little detention, and maybe even sweep a floor. Punishment for being late to school in some of these communities where we work is a little more drastic. It involves cleaning out these latrines that the guinea worm lives in. It's cleaning out, the areas of the school. It's not going to class, not getting an education, being told to stay home, or other deterrents, to the point where maybe that child decides, I don't need to, or I'm not going to go to school anymore. And they're late. Why? Because they had to walk 6+ miles, 10 kilometers, just to get to school. And they needed to get to school on time after doing all their chores, especially for a young woman that has considered to be more responsibility at home versus at school. These kids are getting up at 4 in the morning to do their chores, walk to school. You know what happens when you get up that early and you're exhausted from that? Come midday, you're falling asleep at your desk. Another reason for the teacher and the school to be upset with you, for lack of a better word. But not only, and another point that was made, not only that, they're getting to school quicker and safer. Now, the feeling of safety is anecdotal. You can't really measure that. But these girls find it that they get their, we had a favorite quote from one of our students that had received a bike that when we were able to visit back in Zambia in 2023, where she said, "I can ride my bike faster than anybody can run." So, bit anecdotal, a bit of shedding humor on a very significant and tragic situation. The health sector. We talked about the work that we do with the Red Cross in Uganda. Help educate people in Uganda with HIV/AIDS, and help tackle cholera, a significant disease that's ravaging Uganda at this time. We put the bicycles into the hands of healthcare workers so that they're able to educate their community better on the diseases that exist and how to prevent them. They get the vaccines into communities. During COVID-19, we were able to pivot, get more bikes into the communities, get healthcare workers into the community, help solve and help get more vaccines into the communities. First and foremost, raise awareness for it. Secondly, back to that slide, you'll see an 88% increase in their reach. Now, these healthcare practitioners are volunteers. They have farms and families and other jobs in their lives. Getting them out there and getting their reach to expand almost by 100% is critical. I don't think I need to explain that any further deeper than it is. I had this opportunity again in Zambia when my visit there. I met a healthcare worker there. Her name was Sipawe. Sipawe is 65 years old. And 4 days a week, she rides over 80 kilometers to visit her clients, her patients. And it's something that she is absolutely proud of. This is her certification, her level of responsibility that she has. But in traveling that, she's got the fulfillment of visiting all of her patients in her community. But she also has a farm that she has to oversee. And 10 children, or grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren that she's taking care of because their parents have been ravaged by HIV/AIDS. And economic opportunity. The bike can carry over 100 kilos. A dairy farmer can get their milk to market to the cooperative twice a day versus once a day, obviously helping minimize spoilage. Farmers can get their product to further markets, expand their market reach, generate more revenue that way, do so more efficiently. We've done a randomized control trial with this company called ID Insight. For those that have done any work in some of these African countries, ID Insight is the gold standard for when you want to get independent affirmation on the data that we get, somewhat anecdotally, because sometimes some of the data we get is the user responding back to us. We did this randomized control study of over 1,500 women in Mambwa district of Zambia. And it was a controlled group of women that had bicycles and those that did not. And the most outstanding data point that came back to us was that women saw a 50% increase in their income. 50% over a woman that does not have a bicycle. What do you hear back anecdotally from that? Is a woman now has power, heaven forbid, in the community for which she lives. One woman comes back, a woman that got the bike comes back and she responds, she says, I actually now have a seat at the table making decisions for my family that I never had before. Why? Because she has power. The banking system that exists, which is in Africa or sub-Saharan Africa, is all done through the phone. She's now building credibility with the banking system, with the banks that she deals with, enhancing her profile and her ability to be entrepreneurial, to expand. People like Sipaway healthcare workers, they start to take over more property, build and expand their farms, and to generate more revenue that way because they have more time, because they're giving back all that time and the efficiency of the bicycle. Global data points, the impact to date. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year, 2025, of course, relative to the work that we did in 2004 with the tsunami in Sri Lanka. World Bicycle Relief was born in 2005. We've distributed 868,000 bicycles. We're on track, and our objective for 2025 is 1.1 million in 2026. And we're looking to hockey stick that by scaling with some global partners, even the ministries of education and health in the countries where we work, trying to convince the Ministry of Education in a country where we work, let's pick Zimbabwe, that they should be investing in bicycles for women and girls to go to school. The Ministry of Education would do that. Why? Data is there. A better education female population in a country, GDP is almost double. Natural for you to want to invest in your citizens to help them thrive. We have a multiplier. When we give a bicycle to a young girl, let's keep with that example, who uses that bicycle to go to and from school. When that bike is sitting idly at home, her other family members are allowed to use that bike. We allow that bike to be used as long as its intended purpose is never taken away. So even if a father lives in the house and he decided that he was going to use that bike and the daughter was no longer allowed to go to school, our bicycle supervisory committee would immediately understand that, immediately know that, and change the course of that relationship. But we have this 5 times multiplier, and we do get the data back that says that, yes, they were able to use the bicycle to get health care, to get access to other market products, or actually get some of their own farm products to a market further away. We have data, we hooked GPS trackers up, and again, understanding sub-Saharan Africa. Well, quite frankly, I think on my drive up here from Toronto, my phone dropped out a couple of times. So here we are in the Western world, and the technical infrastructure is not that great. Imagine what it's like in some of these communities where we work. But we had tracked a farmer. I have 2 minutes left. I'll wrap this up real fast. We had a farmer. He was doing 105 plus kilometers, or 60 miles a day to get his product to market. Just profound, profound impact. Back to the camera. Sorry for all you online people. Apologize for that. I talked about our impact, where we're going, our trajectory, wanting to grow. It's not only through support of people like you in the room and the Rotary clubs that we have relationships already. We want to expand that. We want to grow that. I talked about Kip and Traverse City working with a Rotary club in Malawi to get more bikes into those communities. We're looking and always wanting to expand that relationship. There are ways for you to get involved. I think the obvious is directly with your club and finding ways that we can expand our reach and have a greater impact on the ground. May and June of 2025 is our 20th anniversary I talked about, and we run this program we call Pedal to Empower. So for the bike riders in this room, an opportunity to go track your kilometers, where you have a goal of traveling over a million kilometers, tracking 1 million kilometers, and raising $1 million, US dollars, just for the Americans in the room again. 1.4 million Canadian, but we work on a global scale. I'm going to be around in the porch with the bicycles and with an open heart and an open mind to sit and talk and strategize with each and every one of you how we can work towards mobilizing these communities where barrier is at distance. to help women, entrepreneurs, and healthcare workers thrive. Thank you for your attention, and I really do look forward to talking to you. Thank you for this opportunity to be here.
Because this was specifically, right, Jim? That was specifically picked out for you for your gold medals. Congratulations on those. Changing lives here, 3,600 mechanics. It's not that these are actually just getting dropped off and dumped, right? These have an ecosystem going on here, which is what really warms my heart. So
We're really shy. We're really shy about using the word dumped, but yes.
But if you didn't have mechanics, that's what's going to happen to them. And what an incredible thing to be able, 860,000 plus bicycles on your way to your million target. You're going to hit it. Kurt, thank you very much. I still do have hair jealousy, but on behalf of Rotarians, thank you so much. Thank you. And Marg will have you come up and introduce our next speaker, please. If you have the privilege of hearing from Marg today, she's going to introduce her next speaker. And yes, this thing is heavy.
Well, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, but just for a quick 30 seconds, I want to take the opportunity to thank all of you. About 12 years ago, I was one of the first recipients of the Rotary Peace Scholarship, which allowed me to study conflict resolution, which you saw the benefits of this morning. Never in a million years did I think I would be someone who could engage conflict the way I do today. And it's because of the certificate program at Conrad Grebel University College that I am equipped to do so. So thank you for all of those who have donated to the Rotary Peace Scholarship, of which we're fundraising for one of 4 groups that we're fundraising for through the silent auction. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Raina Neufeld, who is the chair of the Peace and Conflict Studies program at Conrad Grebel University College at the University of Waterloo. She's an associate professor who teaches graduate and undergraduate courses on civil society and community-led transformation, peace building in divided societies, ethics, and reflective practice. Dr. Neufeld's PhD is in international relations from America University, and her MA is in social psychology from York University. She has more than 25 years of experience working with non-governmental organizations and local practitioners on peace and justice initiatives in North America, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Europe, and Africa. Dr. Neufeld's publications include Ethics for Peace Builders, a practical guide, numerous scholarly book chapters and articles, as well as the practitioner-focused reflective peace building, a planning, monitoring, and tool-building kit. Dr. Neufeld's current research focuses on histories of exclusion in the field of peace and conflict studies, as well as transformative dialogue in response to polarization and division. Please let's welcome Dr. Raina Neufeld.
We're very proud of our grads. Oh, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I love bicycling, so thank you. I would never ride a 50-pound bike, but that's just me, and I'm not carrying that much when I go to work. All right, I got to use this. I'm going to start with you talking about one day in June. One day in June 2 years ago, a student who had just graduated from the University of Waterloo decided to come to campus. And for some reason, on that day, they chose to come and find a gender and social justice class and purposely seek it out and then proceeded to attack a professor and 2 students with a knife. How many of you have actually heard about this attack? It was in the news. Yeah, quite a few of you. Importantly, the people who were in that class, the students, the professor, they received immediate care, immediate attention. And so that happened immediately there as well as in the weeks that followed. But as you might expect, an event like that will have effects beyond that day. And for those in the classroom, but then also for the rest of us who lived and worked on campus. And so people had to gradually rebuild their sense of trust, that you could come into a room and be safe, that you could come into a room and explore different topics that you thought were important. And so it led to changes with rules on campus and different ways of ensuring safety, which are well-intended and meant to help keep our students safe, our faculty safe, our staff safe. All really important, right? And that same summer, about 2 months later after the incident, I was in a town hall that was convened by administrators at the university to try to pull us together and hear what people were concerned about. And so at that meeting, a young man who worked in a residence on campus spoke up. And he lamented, and he shared with everyone that he had known the alumni who had committed the attack. And he said, he was one of our own. He was one of our own, and we failed. And it was this gently spoken lament. And it was also a brave thing to say, because he was saying that something very hard, something terrible had happened, and it was not because there was one person who was a bad apple. It wasn't all of that one person's fault. It wasn't outside of our community. It was about us and how we work with people who think differently from us, how we respond to one another who are in our own community. It was inside our house, and we needed to attend to some things. And you know, I'm a university teacher, and I can talk a long time, and I will make sure I'm watching the time signs. But you know, we're at a university, and you wonder, how could a young person be so motivated by hate, by an ideology built on a fear and an insecurity that he didn't even recognize. And then he manifested a hate he didn't even see. That he dehumanized the professor. He dehumanized the people in the classroom who were like himself. And so when I say dehumanization, he never thought of them anymore as having equal moral worth and value. They didn't matter to him. And it was just because they were exploring the edges of knowledge, they were unpacking the idea of power and how do we construct gender. And we're part of a university, and that's what we do. We unpack ideas, we unpack problems, we take them apart, we research, and we figure out what's going on and how we can make things better. And so here was this young man who had latched on to an ideology that he thought explained all of his problems, and he had a whole lot of problems. I mean, as if you listen to the court hearings, he had a lot, and he was blaming all of them on a single explanation. And now my colleague, Dr. Katie Fulfer, who was the professor who was attacked in the classroom, she refused to do interviews on this for more than a year. And only in January 2023, this year, just before the court case was going to be the decision was going to be rendered, she came out and did some interviews. And what she said is, I never thought my own story was important. I wasn't the important part. The most important part, actually, it's not about an individual offender and the individuals who are being attacked in this case. These are bigger ideas that are circulating out beyond ourselves. And these ideologies and ideas are causing not only physical violence, but other forms of violence in our communities. And so she said, and I have the quote in front of you, we have to come together and support each other and challenge this ideology, but we also have to come together and imagine a world where this violence does not exist. Right? We have to imagine a world where this violence does not exist. So, my name, as you heard, is Raina Neufeld, and I teach Peace and Conflict Studies. I'm the chair of the Peace and Conflict Studies program. We have an undergraduate program, we've got a master's program in Peace and Conflict Studies, and the certificate program in Peace and Conflict Studies, which Marg took and now teaches in. And we have been working with Rotarians since 2013. In 2013, 5 clubs in the Kitchener-Waterloo area got together and started fundraising for scholarships for our students, for our programs. And since then, Rotary clubs have donated $172,000 in scholarship funds, which have benefited more than 30 students, many of whom are international students who are coming to do a master's in Canada. And the costs of doing education here are very high. And so we have so appreciated the funding, and there are videos on our website that can talk to you more from their perspective about what they're doing. We had hoped with Rotary that we might be able to get a peace hub here in Kitchener-Waterloo, a peace center, a Rotary Peace Center. It ended up not being possible, and that's all right. But we have these excellent collaborations with Rotary, and we all continue our work together in peace. And so I thank you all. If you are some of the donors who have helped contribute to those scholarships, on behalf of the students, thank you so much. I want to talk to you a little bit about peace and conflict studies and some of the bites we're taking into peace and justice. But let me tell you something a little bit. I've been digging into history. Maybe I'll take this off too and walk a bit. I've been digging into the history of the field, and Dr. Gladys Muir, the woman on the screen, turns out to have been the first director of the first peace studies program ever, and it was in the US at Manchester College in Manchester, Indiana. And she put forward 2 big ideas as being central to peace work and peace studies. And I think these are good questions for us to think about today. And so one of them is, what are the times in which we live? Right? What are the big themes and the issues that are swirling around us today? And it sounds like you have been talking about some of these already. What are the times in which we live? And then, importantly also for Rotary, I think, is what can we do about it? Given our context, what can we do under these circumstances? And so I'm curious. I'm curious about District 6330. What do you think are the big issues that are facing us today? What are the important issues? So I want you to take about 30 seconds. You can talk to each other at your table. You can just think yourself. What do you think are the big issues today? So I'm going to then ask you to call a few of them out. So 30 seconds, take a little time, talk. All right, are you ready to yell out a few? You could probably talk for a lot longer. So what are a few? Climate change. Big. Social media. Link perhaps to social media. Autocratic leaders, tolerance, intolerance, inequity. Misinformation, and sorry, something from over here. Lack of trust. Yeah, breakdown in trust. These are big issues. Big issues, not simple. They link into what we call wicked problems, right? Problems that, and that term comes from planning, wicked problems, but problems that are not simple cause-effect, problems that we know how to intervene in very easily and solve. These are big problems that we just try to move, to intervene in a system and reshape it. We had a Peace and Justice Day at Conrad Grebel for some high school students from the region. And so before they came, we asked their teachers, what do they think the big issues are? The younger generation, what are they grappling with? And so for them, the issues that bubbled up were Indigenous rights, homelessness, US-Canada relations, equity and social justice issues, war. Many students are really concerned about Gaza and Palestinians. Others are concerned about Israel and its safety. Environmental crisis, which was named here. So you can see their list overlaps with yours. These are important times in which we live, significant times. And so the next question for us is, what can we do under these circumstances? And so to answer this question, I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch tracks entirely. We're in lunch. Let me ask you a totally different question. How big is the world's biggest pizza? So I'm talking Guinness Book of World Records. I have a 14-year-old son. He loves the Guinness Book of World Records. We quite frequently hear things. So biggest pizza in the world, how big do you think? Is it larger or smaller than 1,000 meters squared? What do you think? Yell out a size if you think what it might be. You think smaller? Some smaller? Others? Gotta be bigger. Trick question. Gotta be bigger. Nobody trusts what the information. Any guesses? Anyone want to hazard a guess? I'll show you a picture of it. So this is it. It looks pretty big. It's in an arena. It was made by a YouTuber, and okay, this is all our new language too, a YouTuber named Eric, who he was new to me, but not new to 10 million people. And he co-made it with Pizza Hut. 1,296.72 meters squared. Right? That's massive. Well, it was a basic pepperoni pizza. There was a question what was on it. And it was edible. It was edible. And so it was made in squares, and they actually shared it with all. Once they had achieved the record, then they cut it up, they put it in boxes, they froze it, and they shared it with a whole lot of charities. So how do you eat the world's biggest pizza? One slice at a time, I like that. I went with bite by bite, which I think other people here also might have heard something similar. Bite by bite. How else do you eat a pizza that size? And so bite by bite, how do we deal with our big problems? It is the same. We tackle big issues of peace and justice today, bite by bite. And I want to talk about 3 bites that we're engaging with at the university setting, right? Which is not distinct from our community settings. And one is about changing how we think, changing our patterns of thought that are contributing to injustice and violence and war. And those are our deeply rooted mental models, our assumptions that we make. These are hard. In Canada, we've been working after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission on Indigenous Education and the Indian Residential School, we've been working a lot harder at trying to recognize the ways in which our thinking has contributed to not seeing Indigenous communities in the present or not seeing harms that we contributed. And so we have to look at that, we actually have to look at things that when we're not trying to pay attention to Indigenous issues, right? How are we thinking? And so I have a map. I and my colleague, we drove from Kitchener-Waterloo over here. So this map in front of you is great for that. We can drive, we're situated, it shows, you know, where we are in relation to Toronto, in relation to the US border, bodies of water. And so it's very much mapping our political landscape and our settlement landscape. And it's the one that I rely on a lot. But then compare that map to this second map. And so this map is a map that has the Haldimand Tract mapped onto our regular map. And the Haldimand Tract, for those who live in Kitchener-Waterloo and in the Grand River watershed area, it's the land that was promised in treaty to the Six Nations, or the Haudenosaunee, for in perpetuity to support them and their descendants. And so that map then, on this one, you can see it's overlain on the basic driving map that we use. Here's a second version of that map that actually cuts out a lot of, it puts in the background all of the driving, all of the city maps, and it actually puts more in front of us the greenery, the environment in which we are. And we can see from these maps that, in fact, while we live here and our political systems are on this territory and map, at the very same time, there is another reality of what is here on this same land. And looking at it from a Haudenosaunee perspective, we can see what the land in part starts to look like, and where the borders of a political community map onto our own. And so our maps contribute to the erasure. It's an interesting thing to think about, all the ways we use maps to geolocate ourselves. They're great, and what's on the map contributes to what we see and what we don't see. And so remaking our maps, like often you'll hear land acknowledgements or territorial acknowledgements, are part of thinking more about who are we in Canada, where are we located, who else lives here, and how are we responsible for the histories that are on this land that affect us today. And for peace and conflict studies, so my field, a lot of times, a lot of the literature that was written in the 1950s and 1960s focused a lot on conflicts over there, conflicts elsewhere. And it's part of the not seeing in my own discipline that we're trying to be more cognizant of, that actually when we're looking at the maps that are mapping Indigenous presence, it's also about the peace and justice work here, that we have to do work here and internationally. And I know that's not an unfamiliar message, that the communities are linked to the international. But understanding how we think and changing how we think is actually an important action. And I want to highlight that a little bit, that changing thinking is doing. Sometimes it's presented as this opposite, that thinking is not doing. But actually, if you're changing how you're thinking, that is a very important doing. So that's one bite. One bite. Another bite we do is research the challenges, right? Digging into the challenges that we face and doing some research on it. There's lots of research I could talk about, of course. I thought I'd just give you one little example from negotiation. There's a great literature on negotiation strategies and tactics. And so this helps us answer questions like, what are the negotiation tactics currently being used in trade disputes? All right, and I have on our screen this little quote. Well, this is not exactly what's been said. Uncle Sam wants you 51st state. That's not on any poster that I've seen. I'm sure somebody's made a poster of it. Yeah, so what's going on? Is it all just a ruse? if we look at it from a research lens, what do we see going on in the negotiations? And what we see happening is actually an anchoring effect, a really powerful anchoring effect. And so what we find in research is that the anchoring effect is a consistent bias in our thinking. So if you thought you were immune to it, I'm going to ask you to think again. And we over-rely on the first information we receive. And so it means the first thing that comes into our head is what we stick with. Even though we might hear other things after that, it's the one that is most prominent in our minds, in our memory, when we're making decisions later. And so if we're bargaining from a position of, 51st state or nothing, well then anything better than that, right? Like if you think about where the anchor is set in a negotiation, it really shapes what you negotiate on. And so you weren't wrong when I was giving my pizza example. I had a purpose, but I actually tried to help you out. I said 1,000, right? I gave you an anchor of 1,000 meters squared. If I would have given you an anchor of 3,000 meters squared, any base idea you had about how big is the world's biggest pizza would have been a lot higher. And we could have done a nice little experiment, a research study here, and they do lots of those. But it consistently shows up that people, as soon as you hear a number, that's where you start thinking, oh, okay, so that's got to be in the area. I mean, sometimes students do this when they're doing multiple choice tests, right? Oh, that's got to be in the area. I'll start with that one. So none of you did that. Neither did I. Of course, you research because you want to know how to do things better. So if you're wondering, how do I counter the anchor effect? Well, the best thing to do is the choice nudge. That's a very scientific term, choice nudge. And so all it means is somebody reminds you you have options. That's it. Remind that you have options. And then once you start thinking about all of your options, then you can put that first one in context. So that's bite 2, doing research. A third bite has to do with taking informed action. And I started with talking to you about June, one day in June in 2023, one day in September 2023, after listening to people and what was important to happen at the University of Waterloo. The Faculty of Arts had a day called The Urgency of Social Justice. And we structured the day so that people could speak about the work they were doing in social justice without fear. And at the same time, we accompanied the day, and with there was a group of volunteers. I was one of them, other faculty from the Peace and Conflict Studies program and a local organization called Community Justice Initiatives. We put on t-shirts called Designated Dialoguers, and we were there to take a caring approach so that if people had concerns about the day, concerns about the issues, were feeling discomfort, that they would have somebody to talk to who would listen to them and convey important issues to the places that it could be heard. So it was about reorienting how we think about events on campus. And that has contributed to further action, further research. In fact, I am now engaged in a dialogue project, a pilot dialogue project, exploring at the university ways that we can work across difference on campus. And it's trying to meet the challenges that we see and how we have analyzed our own wicked problem, which is we have this polarization where people feel like they are not able to talk because they have been moved to extremes. Kind of, if you think about any one issue, they've moved to the extremes on the continuum and they're emotionally invested in their position. And so that's one of our challenges. Fear is a challenge. Marginalization on campus is a challenge. Wounding the people who have been hurt in the past is a challenge. And lack of knowledge, lack of basic knowledge about issues is a challenge. And so our opportunity then is to engage constructively with curiosity and foster a place of belonging, with collaborative visioning, and learning together. And so we have a project that's going on. I could talk to you about it, but I think you've been sitting for a long time after lunch, actually. And you've been doing great listening. So I think I'm going to skip this slide, but if you have any questions, I think I'm going to go into some questions soon. But we tackle issues of peace and justice today, bite by bite. And we're working on it together. And to go back to our pizza metaphor, though, for a moment. So if you have this pizza that is this large, so it's about 40 meters across or 132 feet across. You want to make any guesses how many pieces of pizza that produces? $68,000, right? Wow. And so if you can imagine the town of Stratford and everybody eating 2 pieces, that would manage to finish the pizza, almost, right? 34,000 people eating 2 pieces each would eat this massive world's largest pizza. That's a lot of people. So it took a lot of people to construct the pizza. It took all the Pizza Hut people. It took Eric and his buddies who are on his videos with him. It took them a lot of time to produce it, but then to eat it. Think about all that. So we have to do it together, right? For peace work, justice work, our problems are a lot bigger than the pizza. And we have to do this work together. I want to actually leave you with this quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, who is the first African-American graduate from Harvard in 1895, and he co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, and his words were, "Now is the accepted time. Now is the accepted time. Not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done. Not some future day or future year." So I want to thank you, Rotarians, for your commitments, for working for peace and justice together. And I want to thank you for listening.
Can we just turn, yeah. We're going to get Jeff to give you appreciation, and then I wouldn't mind asking for 1 or 2 questions after Jeff gives you thanks. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
So let me step up here. So thank you one day in May. Thank you for coming and sharing with us and giving us an opportunity to realize that we can make a difference one bite at a time. Thank you.
Hey, just come back beside the microphone. Sorry, I'm going to try and, I've got my own, so I can eat a lot of pizza too. But so is there a question or 2 before we wrap up, please? Go ahead, just yell it out.
In our current climate of political unrest, how do we adjust our leaders to be more positive than this consistent adversarial approach that I see spreading across our northern hemisphere?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Not
you. Dr. Neufeld.
How can we help our political leaders not, I'm going to reframe it, how can we help them be more positive and not reinforce the negatives? Yeah, it's a real challenge about how are we setting our minds, and I think it's also about how are we talking to each other, right? Part of what's happening is that the pressures pull us apart. All of the negativity pulls us apart, and we see it in our Facebook pages or with relatives, with family, and changing the ways we talk to each other, right? And respect each other. And listen, I think they respond to what politicians respond to what their constituency, what they think they want. And so, I mean, that puts a lot of pressure on us for doing something different, is how I see it, yeah.
That's a good question. Another question? Take the microphone. Yeah, perfect.
Adam Hoffman, Rotary Club of Walkerton. I guess I look back in history and I'm interested in your research. You know, I grew up as a kid and I was very proud of Canada sending peacekeepers around the world. You know, in the white, yes, they were military, but they were white and they were there to create peace between two warring nations. And so many of our military soldiers played that role and they were trained in peacekeeping. Why do you think that has gone from our political? It doesn't seem to be a reality anymore. And what is your research saying? Why is that no longer the way?
I don't have to repeat that question, right? No. So, yeah, I mean, the international system has become there's been changes in the international system in terms of, so peacekeeping came to the fore at a time when we had this, what they called a bipolar world emerging, right? Two major powers that operated, so the USSR at the time and the United States. And so when those two were frozen at the United Nations, then with decisions in the Security Council, then peacekeeping emerges as this other way that states can work together at trying to prevent conflicts from escalating, right? And so putting peacekeepers between worked and was respected. We're in this period of breakdown of the international system is changing. And we're in a period where we're not sure what's coming, but it looks like multipolarity is one of the things they talk about. So that's destabilizing. And peacekeepers were never actually neutral in that they served, where they were put, served some interests more than others. And we just maybe didn't notice I grew up with the Canadian idea, and that's actually why I started studying peace studies, was because I thought, oh, well, of course, this is what we do. This is what we should be doing, peacekeeping. And the more you look at it and the more in which, look at some of the ways in which peacekeeping forces run into trouble, the case in point had to do with Rwanda, and kind of seeing the ways in which not stepping up to prevent a genocide actually was also a political act. That was a failure. And so it led a lot of people to rethink about peacekeeping. And so it's not, I'm a professor, I'm like, oh, it's always more complex, and it is. But doesn't mean we can't do things. And I think actually people are trying to think about, are there ways to get parties to agree to have a force in between that won't catalyze more violence. But, the parties at the table have to be willing.
Thank you. Dr. Neufeld, thank you very much for coming and joining us today. Spectacular discussion. Thank you. Would you, if people would have questions, would you mind? I don't know if you're rushing out the door. You're good?
Not rushing out
okay,
the door.
just perfect. Thank you. We'll do some final housekeeping as we wrap up this afternoon. So thank you very much for that. Went in pretty easily. Perfect. Okay, just a reminder what's going on this afternoon as we start to wrap things up here. Thank you for your attention. Again, going to the apps that you have, you can just go to the Driftscape app. So if you have any challenges, go and see the IT it's actually that way, but the IT is here to help for that. Remember, there's two trails. One's called the Chocolate Trail, and one is called the Beer and Bacon Trail. So those are available, and you can check that out on the app. One of the ones, if they've spent a lot of time on actually this group, which would be really exciting as well, is the scavenger hunt. So there's two scavenger hunts. You're going to see one is from what's called the BIA, the Business Improvement Association of Stratford, has put together one that you'll drive downtown, and then you should be able to walk from there. And the other one is a Rotary one if you want to see what Rotary's done. And the winner of that particular one will garner one of the baskets. There's one from the BIA and one for the Rotary, okay? So that's the scavenger hunt. So first we have the tours, the trails. We have this two scavenger hunts, and the other one we have is the Peace Pole. So this is, I saw this morning, it's fabulous. If you go to the front, it's 500-meter walk. It started in Japan. Now there's over 250,000 of them. This is a permanent exhibit. And Catherine, you're going to be there for the unveiling? Excellent. So at 2 o'clock, they'll head out from here. So that would be great if you want to do that and have to see these 3 beautiful markers. And it says, "May peace prevail on earth." Dr. Neufeld was talking about that. It's wonderful. That's at Gallery Stratford. The last one is the warehouse tour. So this is the festival, Stratford Festival Warehouse. It is a 1-hour tour. It's a walking tour. There's accessibility. You will walk from here to the warehouse, probably about 500 meters as well. In miles, about 6 miles, but no. You can do the quick math. But this, again, there's 55,000 props and costumes there. Largest theater warehouse in the world. It's spectacular right here. Again, the only challenge is 30 people. It could be filled. You'll have to check at the registration desk for that. Tonight, we need to fill up this. Elizabeth Gaffney will be working the room when you come back here at the Cheese. But with the balloons, look for her. Again, she is a power and force to be reckoned with. She'll be shaking you down hard, okay? And yeah, she's already going. She's acknowledged, oh yeah, that's for sure. We need you to recommend people to be hypnotized tonight. It's only $5. $30 if you want to have your name removed. And again, all the money here, we're impartial. We take US dollars at par. Dale Kay, again, this is beyond a treat that we have this hypnotist comedian coming tonight. He's been on Disney cruises, universities, Atlantis Resort. So audience participation is going to happen. So if you don't nominate someone, pay attention here. If we don't have enough nominations, guess what there is? It's called audience participation. You'll get your hand touched on that as well. So again, Elizabeth Gaffney, you'll see her with the balloons. If you could please help out with that. Silent auction, live auction. Please bid generously. It's going to be split. We heard from Kurt on the World Bicycle Relief, Harvest Hands, the Rotary Foundation, and we heard from Dr. Neufeld going to the Peace Scholarships as well. So the money is going to a good cause. The money that you paid when your phone rang, because I heard 3 phones go off today, $5 each, goes to end polio. Any of this money for the hypnotist goes to end polio. Silent auction, live auction will go to these 4 beautiful charities. Last but not least, if you enjoyed the wine and cheese, we were having wine and cheese starting here at 4:15. 4:15 here in the Corolla room, the big room, whatever, the ballroom, whatever we're going to call it, the gala room. And then the program is going to start at 4:45. So again, you will not have a lot of time. So if people are in your way, push them out of the way. Get to the cheese and wine at 4:45. Brent Shackleton will be your MC tonight. I will be here drinking wine with you because I no longer will have to have any MC duties, although I don't see him here. So hopefully he shows up because Sarah Hamza works for the Stratford Festival. She is 3rd in charge of the Stratford Festival, who are your MC last night and again tomorrow. They have 2 openings today, so she had a good reason for not, 2 big shows opening today. That's why she's not here. She'll be back to greet with you tomorrow. So on that note, thank you very much for joining us. Get involved. You're here in Stratford. Don't go to your room and have a nap. That's ridiculous. You're here and we've given you and we spent a lot of time and effort, this committee, to make this an exciting package. Take advantage of it. If you have any questions, look through the blue vest. I'm your host, Peter Mirage. Thank you for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you tonight. And if anyone wants to buy me a glass of wine tonight, I wouldn't say no. Thank you.